We all need gis, rash guards, and a bunch of gear to train Jiu Jitsu. Here at RŌL Academy, we've been using Fuji Sports for a very, very long time, but more importantly, they've been sponsoring the RŌL Radio podcast for over a year at this point. Gary?
Yeah, I'm checking out the website right now. Anything you could possibly need, but the new stuff, this American Grappler stuff, is amazing. It's so slick looking. Rash guard shorts, really cool giant eagle on it. It is nice. And then on the opposite end of the spectrum, they've got the Be a Menace Happy Nogi lineup. So as you're getting choked out, you're looking up at the nice smiley face emoji. Anything you could possibly need, you can find at fujisports.com.
You have questions, I have answers. I started a brand new podcast just recently that's available on all podcast platforms and YouTube. It's called Ask a Black Belt. Very simple. You drop me questions, I answer them. Very simple. 5-6 minutes. Gary, have you heard it?
I have heard it, and I really appreciate it. How do those questions get to you?
Well, listen, you can message me on Instagram. That's probably the easiest way to get in touch with me. But you can also comment on any post that I make, and I try to genuinely answer the questions as fast as I can, and they get posted 3 times a week as it is right now.
Beautiful. Ask a Black Belt. Check it out on your favorite podcast platform. Hey, everyone, and welcome back. Please don't forget to hit the like, share, subscribe, download, listen, and whatever other button there is, and leave us a review wherever you do listen. That ensures that we can continue bringing you the amazing content and great guests like we have for you today. Kristina Barlaan didn't start her martial arts journey until the age of 20. First in Muay Thai, then after a year, moving to the mats and becoming a phenomenal competitor, winning major tournaments from blue belt all the way to black in both gi and no gi. On this episode, Kristina discusses a wide variety of topics, from how she had to trick her mom into letting her try martial arts, her transition from striking to Jiu Jitsu, her hilarious dogs and the damage they have done, how BJJ mental coach Gustavo Dantas changed her mindset, helping her tap into her true potential, and the benefits of admitting one's weaknesses and fears. Here's the RŌL Radio with an artist, martial artist, instructor, and advocate for mental health, Kristina Barlaan.
Welcome to RŌL Radio.
And we are live.
Here we go.
Sounds like the show started before it started.
It did. I think we're going to have fun today. There's exclamations going on. We're going to have a good time.
I'm actually glad to see you smiling because about 3 minutes ago, you were so grumpy.
I was
Lord, help us.
I get a little agitated.
A little. A little.
We can save this for a takeaway. We don't have to talk about this right now. I'm a little embarrassed,
My
too.
God, good. Finally, somebody made you embarrassed.
It's hard. It's hard. I have a little threshold.
That snow was crazy.
Oh, yeah. We can talk about that instead. Yeah, we just dug ourselves out of a foot of snow.
How much did you get?
11 inches, I think we got. Yeah,
we got.
So all in a 24-hour period, and my back is killing me from, I don't have a snowblower, so I was out there digging it out, cleaning the cars off multiple times, and then the kids wanted to go sledding, and they didn't want to walk, so I had to drag the sleds down the street with them on it. So I got, even though classes were canceled, I got a hell of a workout yesterday.
Good. So, finally,
yeah,
somebody skipping you in check. Yeah, no, we got dumped on too. It was quite a bit. Yeah, and we are like at the end of the subdivision, so all the wind just blows everything. So
nice.
In the backyard, literally, I had 3 steps of my deck were fully covered.
Okay, so
it was like probably 2+ feet in the back over there. So
what was it like looking out the window and watching your wife do all the snow blowing and
listen, I did half, she did half. Okay. Actually, she loves doing it, and she was
sure she does.
No, listen,
yes,
listen.
I'm sure she does.
Listen, you can ask her, but I
will. I'll see her Saturday.
I went out to clean the driveway, and she actually got upset with me that she wanted to go.
She wanted it done right. She didn't want to go. She just wanted it done right. We should probably wrap this up and get going with the actual reason we're here today.
Never mind. Kristina, welcome to the show. Good to see you. Do you see what I have to put up every single day? This is ridiculous.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for doing this with us.
I assume no snow by you.
No. The wind is howling though, and we got a lot of crazy rain. But like that's pretty much the extent of it. No snow,
Good.
just angry wind and rain, but it's not cold. It's still, I don't know. It's very confusing. I look outside and it looks like it's freezing and it's not. So it's confusing.
Yeah, well,
Not used to this yet.
My in-laws live in Florida, and they always send us pictures of the screenshots of the weather app, and they are like, "It's cold. It's 65." It's like,
Yeah,
oh.
no. I'm from California, and I'm definitely used to less temperamental weather. And right now, I'm like northwestern tip of Florida. It's like in the Panhandle. A lot of people don't even regard this as Florida; they just regard it as South Alabama. So, I don't know. I guess maybe it comes with not knowing where on the map we are. It also doesn't know what kind of weather it's supposed to be. It's just generally confused.
That's the goal.
Well, at least you don't have 12 inches of snow. That's the
No,
that's the upper hand
no,
of it.
thank you. I would gladly opt out of that.
Well, listen, thanks for being here. Thanks for spending the next hour or so with us chatting about jiu-jitsu and about life. I think what makes your story very interesting that you actually come from striking background. You've done quite a bit of Muay Thai. Is that am I correct on that?
Yeah, I did. I definitely started off with Muay Thai first, and I had like a couple amateurs before I even picked up like fully committed to jiu-jitsu. And then it was just kind of like, okay, I'm leaving you, Muay Thai. I'm sorry. I have to go.
What was so appealing about striking that got you in it and then kept you in it?
Well, with striking, yeah, well, I grew up like as a big martial arts fan, but like was never allowed to actually participate in martial arts, just being a girl. And like my mom was like overprotective and are just like, oh, girls don't do that stuff. And so it's just kind of like, but why do I want, honestly, why do I want to hit things? I can't say I wasn't a violent child, but I was definitely a child who was very physical. And like, if there's any one child that needed to be put into like a martial art or contact sport of any shape or form, it was me. And so I just had to live vicariously through like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Power Rangers, Jackie Chan, Bruce Lee, like Jean-Claude Van Damme. I would watch like Bloodsport, like, reenacting everything like, and, my mom would be like, why are you like this? I'm like, I don't know why I like this. Please let me do lessons. Like, no, girls don't do that. Why? And so like when I finally was like old enough, I had to convince my mom I needed striking for self-defense. Like it had been long coming. I mean, again, I just always, I haven't always wanted to punch or kick people, but you can't deny if you grow up watching, it's kind of appealing, right? So again, I'm not a violent person, but there was a great appeal of like wanting to punch somebody. I don't know why. and yeah, I had to convince her I needed self-defense. It was based on a true story lie. I didn't lie to her completely. I mean, there I was at a gas station and some guys were being knuckleheads and they're kind of like, I don't know, I don't think they would really pick a fight with me, but they were looking for trouble. And it kind of dawned on me, like, man, if they really had tried to do something, I talk a big game about like, yeah, I can fight, but I've never actually been in a street fight before. So would I actually be able to defend myself? At that point?
At that point, yeah.
I was 20, I think. I'm pretty sure.
A little bit older. It wasn't like a early high school thing or anything.
Yeah, I was 20 when I was like, yeah, I'm gonna try to convince my mom that this needs to happen. So I played it up like I was scared, like really, really scared. It was just more of like that thought. I'm like, man, I don't really know how to defend myself. I had to like pretend like I was crying, pretend I was traumatized. But I just so happened to already have like a flyer, like here, and then it just kind of went from there. And it's very, very satisfying hitting a punching bag or kicking a heavy bag for the first time. It's kind of like, especially at that point, everything had been building up. Like I have all of this pent up, I don't know, say aggression, but pent up aggression, a lot of aggression and a lot of like competitiveness that just needed to come out and really couldn't come out otherwise. And it was just very cathartic. I feel like striking was for me.
Walk me through the first day.
Walk me through the first day.
Yeah, walk me through the first day of striking. So like, where are you going? Like, do you know where you're going? Do you book a class or is it more random? How does it all happen?
Okay, so there's a few different parts of how this came like together. So first, I was still in vet tech school. And it was during one of my classes, and I had nothing, the idea to even look at striking schools or even Muay Thai schools didn't really occur to me yet. I was really into like watching Tony Jaa movies like Ong Bak and like The Protector. So like a lot of, movies like that. And just so happened that I had an English teacher when I was in, when I was in college. And we were just, chatting after class, and she had like this keychain that had like the spike on it, like the grooves on it, right? And I picked it up. I'm like, what is this for? Stabbing people? And she gave me like a dead on straight look. She's like, actually, yes. And I'm like, and she's like, yeah, it's a weapon that we use in the martial arts called Krav Maga. My cousin teaches it. And I'm like, oh, that's really cool. And then in my head was like, do they have like Muay Thai or kickboxing at this place that your cousin teaches at? And she's like, I don't really know. And then I don't know how we got to it, but she eventually decided like, hey, maybe I can get my cousin to come in here and do like a quick little class of like self-defense stuff. I'm like, yeah, that sounds really cool. And he came in, and then like the last part of like this hour session was we had to like hammer fist this like, like this big like kick pad. And just that sensation of getting to punch something for the first time and have someone not be mad at me or tell me you're not allowed to do that, you can't do that, was like so liberating. And I was like, oh my God, I need to find a place now. I need to find a place right now where I can keep doing this, because this feels really, really good. And then like, it just, I think like maybe like a few weeks later, my boyfriend at the time and I happened to like, hey, let's check out this fish and chips place. This is a very random story. I know we go on tangents. And we went to this fish and chips place, and it happened to be right next to Cesar Gracie's academy, like his HQ in Pleasant Hill, California. I had no idea what jiu-jitsu was. My boyfriend was just like, oh, wow, there's a jiu-jitsu gym here. Oh, there's some UFC fighters that come out of here. And it's like, we should check it out. And I'm like, I don't know what any of that is. I don't know what jiu-jitsu is. I don't know what UFC is. I'm like, sure, let's see if they have Muay Thai. And so we see like the flyers, if they have Muay Thai classes. We like walk in. At that time, Vinny Megalis was like one of the instructors there for jiu-jitsu. So I see like there's like a few guys on the mat, and they're just kind of rolling around. I'm like, I guess that stuff. And then I saw two guys that are just kind of hitting some Thai pads. And I'm like, oh, that must be the Muay Thai guys. And like, I go and talk to them. They're like, oh, no, this is just kind of an open mat time. The instructor's not really here. I'm like, man, I really want to like punch something. And the guy's like, I can hold these Thai pads for you to punch them. I'm like, yeah, and like, literally I had just come from eating, just going to have fish and chips with my boyfriend. I'm like, I wasn't like just super nice, but like, that was like the last thing I want to do. And so I like punch these things. I'm like, yeah, this is so cool. And then gears start turning. They're like, here, take a flyer. You should, maybe come by next time and try out a class. I'm like, sure, yeah. And I'm like, have this flyer. And I'm thinking, like, there's no way I can get my mom to agree to this. A couple days later, that incident at the gas station happened. I'm like, oh my God, I don't know how to defend myself. And I'm like, maybe I can use this big brain. I had the flyer. Went to my mom, pretending like I'm crying, say, Mom, I need self-defense, this thing at the gas station, these guys, they scared me. I think I need self-defense classes. I need to defend myself, Mom. Like, okay, cool, whatever. I go in, and then I don't think I've ever been so excited before. I didn't even have the right materials. I just walked in. I'm like, hey, I'm here to learn. And like, okay. And like, I was a knucklehead. Like, think like Labrador Retriever energy, like just like, squirrel. I was just hyped. I was so, I'm not a spaz, but I was just so eager to do everything. Whatever you told me to do, I was like, yeah, you want me to punch that? I'm gonna punch that. You want me to kick that? I'm gonna kick that. And I think they were like really into it. They're just like, dude, I think she's going to be here for a while, and that was pretty much it. Like I gave them, I already knew walking in that I was going to be giving them money, knowing that my mom was funding this thing that like, she doesn't need to know it's not really for self-defense. She doesn't need to know that I'm really doing this because I want to fight people. And then that was it. Joyous Kristina, who wants to be in combat sports, was born.
There you go. So do you notice jiu-jitsu at that point, or is it kind of in a complete background because you are so infatuated with striking?
Yeah, complete background noise. It wasn't even an idea or anything I even looked at until my Muay Thai coach was just like, hey, he noticed I was really flexible. And he's like, I think he tried to like chicken wing me or something. He was trying to put me like in a Kimura. And then like, I just like, at that time, I'm still pretty flexible, but I'm nowhere near like 20-year-old Kristina flexible, which is nowhere near like child Kristina. But like, he tried, I thought it was a chicken wing, and like it's a Kimura, and then like I dislocated my shoulder and it went all the way around. And he's like, what was that? What was that? Shoulders aren't supposed to do that. I'm like, oh yeah, it's this thing I can kind of just dislocate it or whatever. And then he's like, let me show you something. I'm like, okay. And it's like, so he tried to show me like an arm bar, triangle. He tried to show me like a scissor sweep. I'm like, okay, this is weird. And then Caesar Gracie was there at the same time that day. And he was like, hey, Caesar, check this out. And he like tried putting me in a Kimura, and I just rotated my arm all the way out. And then Caesar's just like,
I can work with this.
And then my Muay Thai coach, his name is Dan Black. He looked at Caesar's like, Caesar's like, hey, maybe you should try this. Maybe you should try that. And then Dan's like, no, Caesar, she's mine. She's going to do Muay Thai and Muay Thai only. She's not doing Jiu Jitsu. And I was like, what is this? Mom, Dad, stop fighting. And then like, I didn't understand that Caesar was like a really big deal, other than the fact that obviously his name was on the front of the school. So like he's the head honcho there. So yeah, like they try doing some jitsu with this wrestling chick, like nogi. Didn't make any sense to me. I was like, you say that jiu-jitsu is about technique and leverage, and I'm not getting any of that. I'm just kind of flailing around, getting smashed on by these people who are like bigger, stronger, more athletic. I don't think this jiu-jitsu stuff is for me. I've literally said this, like, I don't think this jiu-jitsu stuff is for me. I don't like it. I want to stick to punching and kicking people, right? And then that was it. It took me a full-on year before I even touched jiu-jitsu again. And so up until then, it was just background noise. They're like, oh, they're doing that pajama stuff and they're rolling around on the ground. But we're doing that tough Muay Thai stuff. We punch and kick people. I was a knucklehead. Again, I was a knucklehead. I just complete like, yeah, hit me. Right.
So what changed a year later? What was that transition?
My teammate, he convinced me. He's like, hey, I think you should try out jiu-jitsu. I think it could be really good for you. I'm going to lend you a gi top. I'll lend you my gi and you can try out. Just see how you like it. I'm like, Virgil, I don't think so. I was like, just try it. I think you'll like it. I'm like, okay, let's try the pajamas on, right? So I went in like Sambo style. I didn't have pants, just the grappling shorts, this big, like, I don't know, it was like an A1 or an A2, like, and I'm like 120 pounds pushing, and then, and then I didn't have like a belt. So I just grabbed, like the random belts that are in the back of the gym somewhere festering with who knows what's on it. Too long. I didn't even have the black tab on it, the black sash on it. So it's just like, all right, I'm ready for this jiu-jitsu stuff. And I don't know why, but it just made sense. Like everything just clicked, and I felt so empowered. So like, oh my, I felt like a little human backpack or like a wet blanket, like I could grab onto people, and like just the idea. I don't know. It kind of like unlocked like that memory or that part of me that like, oh yeah, remember as a kid you liked jumping and climbing on people? You remember that? You remember when you were a kid, and you saw like the big 6-foot guy, and the first thing you did was like climb up his leg like a feral kitten and tried to like get onto their shoulders. Like, you remember that? Yeah. And so when I touched that gi and I had that grip for the first time, it like unlocked all those memories that I just kind of like forgotten. That like, yeah, I like climbing things. I like attaching and using my hands. I like wrestling with my cousins. Why wasn't I doing this from the beginning? But it took a while before I even fully committed to doing jiu-jitsu, because I was like, oh, I got amateur fights coming up. I have, this smoker or this exhibition fight coming up. Like, I'll just maybe hop into class every now and then. So I really didn't commit to jiu-jitsu until Kyle, who's my professor now, till Kyle Teja came into Caesars. And then once I saw his style of jiu-jitsu, I was obsessed. And then I quickly realized I actually don't like getting punched or kicked. I like punching and kicking, not so much on the receiving end. And jiu-jitsu was very appealing where I didn't have to get hit in the head. And
as you're going through these motions, what was the biggest difference between Muay Thai and Jiu Jitsu? And I'm not talking about the striking grappling part. I'm talking about mentally, or as you inside of the game itself. What was the biggest differences that you noticed between those two?
I think the biggest difference was I just felt it didn't matter if I was going with someone who was bigger, stronger, like physically, I could see them. Like I knew that if I had to spar with someone who was like bigger, stronger, or like I had to spar with a guy, I was always kind of like flinching, or I was afraid. I was always afraid, right? Or like, and mentally, and this is kind of where it comes in later on. With my second professor, Gustavo Dantas, was like, yeah, there's like that fear of like, man, I have to perform a certain way, and I just couldn't ever shake that, especially when I went with people who are more experienced, bigger, stronger, athletic. Like there was no way to close that gap. It didn't matter if I had really good technique. If the person was bigger, stronger, more athletic, and they had good technique, I couldn't close that gap in Muay Thai. So I'd always felt like there are certain times where I felt like, cool, I could put the pressure on, but a lot of times I just felt scared. But at that time, I wasn't aware of that. I wasn't willing to admit that I was actually scared. I would have made a million other excuses other than saying I'm scared, right? So it was like, I just need to focus on this, focus on that. Now, bringing me over to jiu-jitsu, it was like I didn't care who was in front of me. The fact that I had my gi on and the fact that I knew I could grab them, I felt super empowered. Like I knew that even if I couldn't damage this person, quote unquote, they couldn't damage me. Like I wouldn't get hurt. Whereas when I would spar Muay Thai, I was like, oh, if I get hit in the head, man, I get knocked for a loop, or I go down, or if I get kicked really too hard at my leg, like it hurts my knee, or like you deal with like those pains that comes with striking. And man, don't get me wrong, I was getting smashed on. Jiu-jitsu is rough too, but I felt like I could stand in front of anybody, and I felt confident. And I think that was the big, I guess, sell for me. Like that was the aha moment. I was like, oh my God, like I'm a giant, even though I'm like the smallest person on this mat. Whereas a Muay Thai, I just felt tiny all the time. And again, 20-year-old version of me would not have been willing to admit that, or 2021, because by the time that I started doing jiu-jitsu, I was 21. So I wasn't going to admit that back then.
They often talk about jiu-jitsu being the art that can really manipulate the situation regardless of the strength or size. The technique is really, I don't know, superior is a strong word here, but it definitely, you can, one, protect yourself, but two, manipulate even a larger partner or larger opponent. Let me ask you this, because you are clearly on a smaller size, and we've had a number of different women, and it's so interesting to talk to you guys about this, because one, finding a good training partner for you is probably harder than for me or Gary, right? But two, you have to go through these struggles. I would imagine you do. Somebody is heavier and they are on top of you, and then now you have to maneuver through these scenarios and troubleshoot these situations, even though that you are outnumbered as far as pounds or even power, right? Strength. What's your vision on this? Is jiu-jitsu really so technical that size doesn't matter?
Yes. That's what, Kauta, that's all his, technique conquers all. I mean, I will say, like, at a certain point, size is going to matter, especially if you're at the same level, right? Or at the higher level. Let's just say that, like, once you get to like brown, black belt, size, strength, athleticism, those things come into play, especially at a competitive level, if competitively speaking, right? Because for sure, like at a brown or black belt level, you can have like a competitive, smaller fighter, training with someone who's much bigger and doesn't train at the same intensity, and still but has really good technique, the smaller person can get the better of that exchange. At the lower belts, it doesn't matter as much. I mean, it can, but it really just depends on what you focus on, which was like, I knew right away, I don't have strength, I don't have size. And at that point, I also believe I don't have athleticism. Like no one, I think the first time someone called me athletic was Gustavo Dantas. And it was like when I was like 22 or 23 years old, he's like, yeah, you're athletic. And I'm like, you really think I'm athletic? And he's like, you're literally an athlete in a sport. How are you not athletic? I'm like, I didn't play any sports growing up. I was a dancer.
Yeah, I was going to say
like,
that. You were a dancer, though, and I don't think people give the athleticism in that credit as much as they should.
No. Nowadays, yes, I'd say it gets more credit. But back then, like when I was doing dance, like in the 90s, and even in the 2000s, it was like, oh, you do that, like sissy, people, I would always be making fun of me, like, hee, and you tutu. And I'm like, dude, dance, like ballet was super hard. Like I was at the studio, I was actually just talking about this last night. At a young age, like we're talking like, either late grade school or like even early middle school. I'm at the studio 6 days a week for at minimum 3 hours every single day, and that's between, and it wasn't just like, oh, looking pretty the entire time. Like we're doing jumps, we're doing leaps, we're doing, everything has to look perfect. And it's like, the duck on the water, right? Like looks, or the swan on water, right? It looks so beautiful on the water, but underneath the feet are like, right. And so, yeah, like I was physically very athletic, and it like, yeah, just no one gave me that credit back then. And so, but it really, really translated well into the jiu-jitsu. But
I was about to ask you, do you think that had a foundation of items like balance, weight distribution, and mobility, and so on? I mean, that amount of time that you spend on a stage or practicing dancing in a studio had to translate somehow into these key components of jiu-jitsu.
Yes, 100%. Like, I think that was my two biggest assets when I first started jiu-jitsu, because I didn't have size, I didn't have strength. And like I said, I didn't believe I was athletic. Even doing Muay Thai, I still didn't believe I was athletic, right? I was like, I have my flexibility and I have my coordination, like my body mechanics. You only had to show me something once. Like if I could see it, it was like learning choreography for me. If I could see it and if I could feel it, like if I give me a chance to do it, then I could recreate anything, right? And so that also led me to move in ways that like were very, very different than how other people were moving. So I would problem solve. Like no one taught me how to invert as a white belt, but here I was, people were trying to pass my guard. I bring the leg over, I keep the foot in between the leg, and I'm back spinning, right? And people were like joking, like, why are you doing that? That breakdancing stuff, why are you breakdancing? I'm like, I'm not, I just don't want you to pass my guard. And it was so instinctual for me to like, hey, I'm going to bring my leg in there, because for as long as my leg is there, you can't pass my guard. It was just like this organic way of like, I had to use my assets that weren't strength, that weren't size, and flexibility could help at some point, but I would get stuck in certain places. But knowing that for as long as I could see and feel it, and then like just again having that empowerment of like, whoa, like I see it, I try it, and then I could get it right away, and then I could just keep practicing it over and over the same way that I would like in dance, right? When you learn choreography, you just do it over and over and over again. Oh, that's pretty much drilling in jiu-jitsu, right? So it's huge. Like I won't say I wasn't making mistakes, but it was so much easier for me to learn and so much easier for me to correct if I was doing something wrong, because I was so aware of like, oh, this feels off. Like this doesn't feel like how that looks. Like I feel like there's something needs to be corrected. And then I can ask questions like, hey, foot here, like there, okay. And then once Professor Kyle came into the picture, it was like learning the why am I doing something, right? So before he got there, it was just like I was a parrot. I just copy. And then once Professor came in, it was like, oh, now I know why I'm gripping the way I'm gripping. I know why I'm putting my hip the way I am. And getting that as a white belt just essentially just really set me up for success, because it just made me think differently. I couldn't fight any of my teammates using their advantages because I didn't have them. So I had to fight using what, like, again, I had no choice. I had to have good technique. Otherwise I was going to get smashed every round, So there's just that heightened importance.
Do you think that understanding why is important?
Yes, 100%. It's kind of like, there's so many people that kind of use this analogy. I believe Compredo used it before. Felipe Costas, people from like Braza, and Kyle's like such good friends with them, and he kind of grew up with them too. It's kind of like the difference between like when you're like a parrot and you just copy words. You like don't necessarily know what you're saying. You're just saying it because you're hearing it. And then the difference between that and actually learning the alphabet so that you can learn to make words, and then you learn and then you can learn to put those words in a sentence, then you can put that into a paragraph, then you can make a story. That's the difference between knowing the why and not, right? Because if you don't know the why, you'll never be able to understand, I guess, the mechanism. Like if something goes wrong, you can't correct your work, right? And that's what's really huge. Like if I just say, here, you're gonna grab here, you're gonna grab here, and someone says, well, why? Like, well, because that's just how it's supposed to be. You're supposed to grab here and you're supposed to put the foot there. Like, okay, well, what happens if I don't have that grip? What happens if I don't have that foot there? Oh, does that mean the move doesn't work? Like, no, it just means that you have to know the mechanisms, learning the rules so that you know how to break. So now you know how to break them,
right.
Or learning how to assemble something so that you can take it apart and reassemble it.
Yeah, Gary and I, we talk about this very frequently on this show, and even that's one of the big messages that I always tell my students is the moment you understand what, the moment you have the comprehension of why, now you can almost create your own moves. Meaning you can troubleshoot things. You can develop things as they are happening versus be thinking, step 1, step 2, step 3. Hold on a second. There was something in between. What the hell it was? And now you are in this lost moment.
That, if somebody, the lost moment is if somebody shuts something down and you don't know why, you don't know the concept.
Yep.
Well, now you're finished. That's it. It's over. But if you know why all this is happening, well, then you can move on from that. You can change your situation in the moment. You don't have to ask questions after class or, the next class or anything. You can change on the fly in the moment.
Yeah, it's essentially, it's like your own problem solving. And if you want to get good at the sport, you have to be able to do that. You can't just be fed information and then that's it. Like you don't have your own process of critical thinking or your own process of problem solving, because then you're always going to be needing somebody else to give you the answer, right? Of course, there's going to be certain oh, I found myself in this position that was very unfamiliar. I don't know what it is. Can you guide me? That's one thing. But a completely other thing where you're playing something that is familiar, like maybe say something closed guard, right? And then the moment that closed guard is broken, and then you don't even have an idea of how to navigate, why your closed guard is so important, or why what guard is what's controlling people with your legs and your hips. If you don't know how to recover those things.
What kind of dog do you have? What kind of dog?
There are 2 dogs here. They're both American bullies, but they look very, very different. One of them is her name is Baby Girl. That wasn't even what it's supposed to, her paper says Princess Buttercup, but she's built like a potato, and she's just sort of so stocky, and she's the one that likes to bark a little bit more. She gets very you're not paying attention to me, so I'm
don't bring it up. You're going to put me in a bad
attention.
mood again. Thomas is going to bring something up.
No. I was about to say, did you notice how when Kristina was talking about Jiu Jitsu, she was very serious. The moment we brought up the dog, big smile popped on her face. She gets animated. We are big dog people here. So
my dog ate my couch
animals
the other day.
and food.
Hey,
Kristina, ask Gary what happened the other day with his couch. Ask him.
Gary, what happened the other day with your couch?
Well, my dog who has not been showing signs of separation anxiety ate his way through the end of my couch the other day. It's not that bad, really. I mean, he pulled it apart at the seam, and I've got insurance on the couch and stuff like that.
It's bad.
Oh my God.
It's bad. I saw that picture.
No.
Yeah, it's pretty bad.
I didn't. I didn't love him for about 15 minutes afterwards.
When I was living in Arizona, and I had two pitties. I had two pit bulls. One of them was Kimura, and one of them was Lindona. So Kimura was super chill, big 80, 90-pound pit bull, just like barely ever barked, gentle, like just looked really intimidating, but was just like the biggest softie. Mm-hmm. And then we were like, sometimes like we're out all day, we feel really bad because Kimura's at home all by himself. Like we should get a dog for our dog, Yeah. And then so we adopted another pit bull, and her name was Lindona. And she was like the complete opposite of what Kimura was. And Kimura, chill. And Lindona was like super, just like
high maintenance.
Yeah. And so we thought she would be cool. And then like, there was one day we came home and we had already done certain things. Like there was one day we came in and it was like she ate up all of like the magazines that were on like in the room. So
it starts with the paper,
tore up
doesn't
magazines, tore up. I'm like, oh my God, what happened? It looked like a tornado ripped through there. Like, all right. So then we put up like a puppy gate, right, around the kitchen so she couldn't get into the living room. There's nothing really that she could get into the kitchen that we knew of. There's other things that she did. Like I cannot tell you like the trauma that this dog has caused. and then there was just so then she's in the kitchen, and then there's one day where you come into we park the car in the garage, and we're gonna walk through the door, the garage door and the kitchen, and there's water flowing from underneath the door. No. And I'm like, what is this water from? and I'm like, oh man. So we open up the door. It's like 2 inches of water in the kitchen. There's a bathroom. The bathroom that's by the kitchen. She had somehow got to the pipe in the bathroom that connects to the toilet. And she bit through it and it just flooded the entire kitchen, got into it was flooding into the garage, like 2 inches of water. And we're looking at this dog like, what in the actual, like, what is wrong with you? We couldn't think, we didn't think it could get any worse. And like, oh, we spoke too soon. It got worse. And like, this is on top of things like, at that point too, we had to learn to tuck chairs in. Yep. Like there's one time that she was in the kitchen and we woke up and I heard something fall. Like, what is that? We got up, we got downstairs and like, we left some food on top of the table. She used the chair to get on top of the table. And she's just standing on top of the table, eating, I think it was pizza. And she just looked at us like,
yeah. Go back to it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Listen,
I'm like, traumatizing.
I have a dog and a cat. Okay, I got 80-pound boxer and a little cat, right? But listen, so I have a theory that they work as a team. Okay, anytime there's food left over on a counter overnight, literally somehow that plate ends up on the ground and the food is eaten. Okay, like I am convinced they work together, but. Anyway, this is how this show derails into the dog.
We'll talk. Let's get back. Well, I mean, we could keep this up. I don't care. We could talk about it after. I don't know how the listeners are going to feel because I've got
2 dogs. There's Baby Girl and there's Mikey, and they're both American. They're like American bullies. They're not pit bulls, but they're not bulldogs. They got like that wide shoulders, husky. No neck, and they just got that look about them. But they're not pit bulls, but they are American bullies. It's like those very specific exotic bully breeds.
I've got a laundry list as well, and it's probably in the I would say $5,000 range of just damage around the house from my boxer, not the guy I got now. The guy I got now.
Has catching up to do.
He's
starting with the couch.
We're only at a couple $100 at this point. Not that, yeah. So
all right, let's pivot this back to jiu-jitsu.
Why? I'm having fun.
Back into it. Back to jiu-jitsu.
You said you went to vet tech school?
Yeah.
All right, we will get back to jiu-jitsu. We'll talk about that after too. Nobody wants to hear. I was a vet tech I was in the industry for over 20 years. So.
And then Gary met me and I converted him. He quit his job and now he teaches jiu-jitsu. Listen, one of the cool things about your story is that you had the privilege working and learning from Gustavo Dantas, known as a BJJ coach. His presence, and I had privilege of being on his podcast, and he was here on our podcast, what a brilliant mind. But his approach is very unique when it comes to competition and just mental state of jiu-jitsu, right? And I'm not necessarily, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but it's not necessarily what benefits jiu-jitsu brings to you, but how do you adjust your mental game to be successful in jiu-jitsu? Am I on the right track here?
Yeah. Yes.
How did that mentality change for you, coming from Muay Thai, then to jiu-jitsu, and then working or having the privilege working with Gustavo? How did that all change mentally in your head?
Well, and here's the thing: if you've got Gustavo, and at that time, I mean, man, that was 2009. I mean, we met in 2008, and then I moved to Arizona in 2009, right? So, like his whole thing, like even like when we first met, and if you know him, and if you're friends with him, you're close with him, like he's always trying to make himself better. He's always trying to prove. It's like his thing is like, man, if there's ever any idle time, think of like how many hours you spend in the car, or how many times he's like, I could be listening to music, or I could be listening to other stuff. And there are definitely times where he would be relaxed and okay, this is my time for just chill. But more often than not, he was very, very like driven to like, I want to be a better person. And so in the beginning, it was always like, hey, check out this audiobook. Hey, have you heard of this? Have you heard this, motivational speaker? Hey, have you heard of this one? And in the beginning, I was kind of immature, I'm like 21, 22. And I wasn't quite ready for it. I wasn't ready. I was like, yeah, I'm like a knucklehead. I really wanted to believe that, like, oh, if I just train hard, that's all I need to do. I just need to train hard. And then the mental stuff is going to figure itself out. I just needed to be tough, and I was really, and he'd always be like, hey, you should kind of look into this, mental part of jiu-jitsu, or mental part of your training. And I'm like, nah, I don't need it. And so it's kind of like, water, rock, eventually, the rock smooths over and is no longer rigid in, the water, so it's just having that constant, like, hey, you should try to approach this a little bit differently, and at that point he wasn't even doing like mental coaching yet. That wasn't even his thing yet. So I was kind of like one of those, like his, like the guinea pigs. I was like one of his first students for like mental training. And it started off with like, whatever he did, he would never have a student do something that he didn't do himself. So he would go through the process first. And then like, at that time too, he was also trying to like make some space for him to also compete again, not just be a coach, because everything was very student oriented there. But he kind of stepped away from competition for a while, and then once he started doing the mental training part, he's like, yeah, I want to compete again. So he tried it out on himself first, and then once he saw the success for that, he's like, there's something here. And then of course he tried to bring it down to the students too, and I was like one of the main students that he tried really getting to do this. And I was so resistant.
Why?
I didn't want to admit that I needed help. I didn't want to admit that I was scared. Like, again, all the stuff, reason why I essentially quit Muay Thai could have been like, yes, I really truly did find my place in jiu-jitsu. It felt more natural. It felt like I belonged in jiu-jitsu the entire time. But I do know that a lot of the reason why I walked away from Muay Thai was because that fear of failure. And because I just, so much I didn't want to lose, but like, again, I was so like, if I lose, that means I'm a loser. That means I lose everything. I don't have friends. I lose the confidence of my instructors. They're not going to want to work with me anymore. No one's going to want to support me. I'm going to lose my friends. I'm not going to be quote unquote cool anymore. So I didn't want to admit that I was so scared to lose. I didn't want to admit that I was so fragile and so vulnerable. I was like, no, I'm just going to push all those feelings down, and I'm just going to train harder. I'm going to hit harder, or I'm just going to throw myself into the training, and I'm going to completely ignore the fact that I'm scared, because if I train harder, I won't be scared anymore. And I really just was not ready to admit that. And so it took for me to have like, and I also have anxiety and depression. I'm clinically diagnosed with those things. And of course there's certain things that can trigger that. Right. And so I remember maybe like the first time losing as a blue belt, and then the second time losing as a blue belt, and then just kind of having like this, I'll say existential crisis, like, oh, do I even belong at blue belt? And like, is this what I'm supposed to do? I have a new coach, I'm not in California anymore. I don't have Professor Kyle. I have Gustavo now. And it's like, and he doesn't know my game. And I don't know how to be coached either at that point. And so it was like a whole process of just like, I want to be good enough. Like there was so much pick me energy. Like I want to be good enough. I want to be worthy of your love, or I want to be worthy of your coaching. I want to be worthy of your attention. And I felt like if I had said that I'm scared to lose, or I'm afraid to lose, or if I say, okay, I need to do this mental training stuff, it would be like admitting that I was weak, and I didn't want to do that. So I had to have a panic attack, like while competing, while also being told you're not going to compete with your A game. You're going to use your B game. You're going to use everything that you're not good at in this tournament. I don't want to see you using anything that you're good at. This is stuff that, Gustavo told me to do. And I'm like, I don't want to do that because I want to win. I don't want to lose. And if you're telling me to play this game that you're telling me to play, I'm probably going to lose. And so just fighting that whole entire time with just nothing but fear and anxiety, and then panicking, and then losing, and then, crying, and just like, I hated how I felt. Finally, I was like, okay, all right, Gustavo, I'll do it. I'll do the mental training. I don't want to feel like this anymore. It took for me to completely break down and just feel powerless for me to be like, I need help. And it should have never gotten that far. But again, I just didn't want to admit it. I didn't want to believe it. So the person who I was before I started doing mental training and who I am now are like completely unrecognizable. Like, I'm not afraid to lose now. I'm also not afraid to say like, I'm afraid of losing. I'm not afraid of saying like, yeah, there's certain opponents I'm scared of. I'm also not afraid to like, hey, I'm going to sit out this one because I don't want to walk into this tournament believing that I feel obligated to do it because I have to prove something to everybody else, completely ignoring that. I need to come first. I need to take care of this first. And if I do this thing because I need to make other people happy, I'm just going to end up getting hurt. And it did. I had burnout. So before mental training with Gustavo, scared, in denial, didn't want to take ownership or responsibility for that fear. And didn't want to even address that it was there. I just didn't want to talk about it. And then now post, working with Gustavo, completely like vulnerability. Another thing, vulnerability is dope. Jiggy, shout out to Jiggy Yoon on that one. Talking about our feelings is good. Submitting the stigma with Aaron Hurley, right? Talking about mental health, talking about the mental game, talking about the stuff that isn't physical, because quite honestly, that's harder to deal with than the physical, because you can't see it. You can't punch it. You can't kick it. You can't choke it. You can't grapple with it. It's just sitting here and it doesn't go away unless you actually do something. So it was literally like the difference between being awake and not awake.
What's difficult about all of this, everything that you talk about, and we just had Erin on the show as well, and she talked about her challenges and her obstacle, her life, is that often when students feel that way, similar to what you just described, they just suppress it, they hide it in, and it's almost impossible for the outsider to really see that there is a problem.
Yeah.
And again, correct me if I'm wrong here, but my thoughts or my mind is going in direction that if we are in that position, it's really so important that we make the first step, that we acknowledge to ourselves that there is something to be worked on. There's something that we need help, that we want to reach out for somebody else to assist us with this. And that's when the first step of the big change takes place.
Yes. It's kind of like, so, there's the sayings like no ego, right? Like you shouldn't have an ego. I'm like, well, we have to, right? Because sometimes our ego protects us, but also our ego gets in the way. There's always that balance. You can't just not have an ego, because you have to have pride in yourself. You have to have pride in your work, and you have to know your worth, right? But it's like, yeah, that breakthrough there is, it's just hard. Like, and some people come to that realization sooner than others. Like, I had a big ego, and I'm like, but at that time I was like, I don't have an ego. I'm okay with that. Yeah, I'm totally humble. I'm totally cool, you know? And then it's like, no, I was like trying to like defend my heart and like my mind, like to the gills. Like, we're talking like, 6 foot deep walls with like 10 feet tall. Like, we're just like, you need to stay. I'm not going to admit that I feel weak right now, because if I say that, you're going to hurt me. And it's like, it isn't until we actually say out loud, like, I'm afraid of being hurt, and not necessarily physically. I'm afraid of my feelings being hurt. I'm afraid of having like my dignity bruised. Only until we actually admit that and say it, can we actually do anything about it, right? And either we're forced to admit it, or again, sometimes you do have the humility to be like, yeah, I could probably use a little extra help, because, something's not making sense. But, sometimes it is a big, big event. Like for me, like having like a panic attack and breaking down and crying and just like physically shutting down. Like, you can have the tough exterior all you want. It's going to manifest physically in one way, shape, or form eventually. No one can stay like tough looking on the outside forever. Eventually, everything erupts. It's like a volcano. It's like a ticking time bomb. At some point, that needs to be managed, and otherwise, it's going to come out in a way that you're not going to like, unless you have the whereabouts to be like, hey, yeah, I could probably use a little bit of help. Like I could probably go to therapy, or I could probably do some mental training, or I could probably at the very least read a book, And I'll tell you this too. The first time that I tried picking up any mental training, I completely went in being hard-headed and like, I'm going to read this and it's not going to be helpful at all. I literally got like 2 pages in, and then when it started talking about address your fears and address the things that you're afraid of and your weaknesses, I'm like, nope, this isn't for me. I don't need to do this. This is dumb. Yeah. And so the second time around, coming to that part, and it said, say what you're afraid of, say what you feel that your weaknesses are. And I'm like, and I just like cry, like, oh, And then once I finally got to like that first obstacle of admitting that like, I'm weak, I'm helpless, and which I'm not helpless, but like I'm afraid. It was so like after I got to that first hurdle, it skyrocketed from there. Like I was like, oh my God, like I'm making these gains and I'm making these improvements. And all I had to do was just say that I was afraid. So it's now,
and now you have the privilege to work with, women particularly, right?
Yeah.
In Jiu Jitsu. And I know that's a big driving factor for you to really improve the female community, female Jiu Jitsu in general. Do you find yourself that a lot of ladies, or maybe even remove the lady part, do you think that a lot of students out there actually have these difficulties of reaching out and struggling, suppressing these feelings and really struggling with this? Because this sounds like a very, very miserable way of living. I mean, being forward, but it's hard, right?
And it doesn't even, you take it out of jiu-jitsu, take that completely out of the picture. I think everybody in life has all of these emotions and all this suppressed feelings and all that hurt and all the baggage that you carry from every, whether it was a slight or whether it was something truly traumatic. If you don't deal with that, Thomas and I have talked about this a lot. If you don't deal with that, analyze it, break it down, admit it, it just piles on and piles on. And it affects every aspect of your life. It's not just like, why am I competing poorly? It's, well, why am I going home and treating my kid poorly? Why am I, when they're frustrated because they can't figure something out in e-learning, it's, for me to jump on him is only going to make it worse, right? Well, why am I jumping on him? Because of what happened to me, right? So take that 5, it can happen in an instant. It doesn't have to be 5 seconds. How am I going to affect this person because of what's happened to me?
Yes.
All right, dude, let's figure this out together. You know? To admit that sentence was what, 2 seconds? Yeah. And now this kid who doesn't want to be e-learning, is going to figure this out, and we're both going to walk away happy today. You got to deal with this stuff, whether it's jiu-jitsu, your home life, school, it doesn't matter. If you don't get through it, I think it just affects every aspect of your life.
Yeah.
So Kristina, so what's the solution? How do we approach this?
I mean, so I would say that luckily, at least in this day and age, like now, I feel like the conversation around mental health is a lot more open. I feel like at least now, I feel like there's more, at least media coverage about it. And it's still highly stigmatized, but at least there's conversations that are openly happening about it nowadays, right? When I was a kid, when I was a teenager, when I was a kid, highly stigmatized, and it's even worsened by I'm Filipino. Like I'm born and raised in America, but my parents are from the Philippines, and in Filipino culture and in a lot of Asian cultures, and I find this in a lot of other cultures, mental health is highly stigmatized. So it's just like we don't talk about feelings, we don't talk about that, and then even if we take the cultural aspect about it out of the scenario, out of the equation, think about like when we were kids. And like how we were raised, a lot of us were raised that like if we feel something, like suck it up, don't cry. Big kids don't cry, or big boys don't cry, or big girls don't cry, or like
if you're lucky,
you're not allowed to feel what you're feeling.
Yeah.
We're made to feel bad for feeling what we feel, starting from a young age. If it doesn't present the way that our parents want us to look, like no, our kids are well behaved. Our kids are super good.
That's us dealing. I think that's us dealing with their ego, with their bullshit, and all the stuff that they've carried, right? Exactly. And that's kind of what I was talking about. Is you got to, Thomas and I are both a lot older than you, and I was raised where.
Speak for yourself. I'm young.
He's
I don't know.
He's in between.
I might be older than you guys think. I don't know.
No. You're an '80s baby, right? A very late '80s baby.
Yeah, 86. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. No, I was well on my journey, not my jiu-jitsu journey, but my life by that point. But it was, what you were saying about like big boys, big girls. You're lucky if that's the way you were talked to. When I was a kid, it was a lot more insulting, and at times it could get violent. And and I think now, that happens to you, and then you're not allowed to deal with it. You're older, you're not even allowed to deal with that shit. And people are, you get told that, everybody's life was like that. It was always like that. Well, so what?
Yeah.
Then you should deal with it too. We shouldn't all just deny that it happened or stuff it down. We should all deal with it. And I think that's kind of what we've been talking about don't look at me like that.
I'm listening to you.
You're saying right through me, man.
Yeah, right? Now I feel like I'm just regressing into my childhood. But so to get it back to where we started, I think, if you don't deal with any of this stuff mentally, it affects you in every aspect of your life. Yeah. Whether you're on the mats, whether you're competing or not, it doesn't matter. It's just it's stuff that really you got to deal with in order to better yourself. Yeah.
So long story short, or if you want to tell like the abridged version of this, if you want to be able to address this, one, it starts with the self first, and we really have to address, what programming did our parents give us that their parents gave them, that their parents gave them, that their parents gave, right? It's all generational, right? It's not so much like, it's not like we're all, I think at a core, we're all loving people. Love is definitely in our hearts, right? But over time that gets kind of clouded, and we don't necessarily love in our authentic selves. We don't love the way that we're actually meant to love. We're going to love people the way that we're conditioned and taught to love. So however way our parents believe that they were showing us love. And again, our parents, didn't matter if it was good, bad, whatever it was, that was the absolute best that they had at that time when they raised us, right? Because again, they're operating with whatever they were given and so on and so forth. So at some point, we have to address our own child that got hurt and be like, hey, I can break that cycle. I don't need to carry that on to the next generation. Like either your own kids, or if you don't have kids or you don't want to have kids, your students, your family members, your relationships. Like we don't want to give the love that we're used to, especially if that love that we're used to is kind of tied into a lot of toxicity that we didn't necessarily even know was toxic. Like, oh, that's just how it is. You know, when I misbehave as a kid, like I got verbally reprimanded, or I got hit, or I was belittled. I couldn't speak my mind. You're like, man, nobody wants to be that way. And then again, like you said, that ends up building up to other things. Like we start feeling shame, we start feeling guilt. And so when bad things that happen that were completely out of our control, like people did things to us, we completely internalize it and like, well, that's my fault. Even though somebody else did something, somebody crossed us, somebody trespassed us. And now like, oh, that's my fault. So I can't talk about it. I feel guilty, so I can't tell other people about it. So now not only are you dealing with your own shame of whatever happened there, and it could be as big or as small as you want, we are now taking on the burdens of other people, the shame of that, and then now not talking about it, and then trying to operate like we're healthy, normal human beings when we're still holding on to that guilt and that shame. That's going to show up in other ways, again, particularly in our relationships with other people. So if you want to take this to like even just like a jiu-jitsu aspect, we really have to learn about like which were the ways that like how can we like love ourselves in a way that we can kind of unburden ourselves of these things that were completely not our responsibility and not our fault, right? And then translate that into jiu-jitsu, because like I wasn't able to start making sense of the mental training part of the jiu-jitsu, of being a good athlete, until I unloaded all the fears that came along with me as a kid. Why did I have a fear of failure? Why did I have a fear of losing? Why did I have a fear of not being good enough or not being strong? Or why did I have that pick me? Well, it's because I wanted my parents' approval so much, right? And that's the approval that we always wanted the most. If it's like first it's parents and then it's peers, right? So it's like a trickle down. Like I want these people to love me, right? And I have to do these things in order to acquire that love, right? So it's like, okay, that those people aren't the source of it. It just has to come from me, unburdened. Now that self-love is there, now that self-worth is there, now it's easier for us to go into like start really embracing like those goals that you have, especially competitively in jiu-jitsu, because it's like you're no longer based off of I need to be a pick me. I need to be the chosen one. I need to be number one so that I can prove to other people. It's more like, oh, I don't need to be number one for validation. It's just that could be your own driven goal that has nothing to do with your own personal value, because it's not going to go up and down. And that is not an easy conversation to have, because some people and a lot of people are not prepared or equipped to have those kinds of conversations, because it's like, man, I just want to know how it can be a world champion. I'm like, you want to be a world champion, we got to talk about childhood trauma sometimes. Nobody wants to do that. Like, man, that feels like that's in the complete opposite direction. You don't want to talk about the past, but I want to go to the future. And I'm like, it's not about we have to talk about the past, but we kind of have to clean up some of the damage. Like, and I'm not saying that everyone's damaged, but at some way, shape, or form, someone has experienced something that they had to suppress, and they weren't allowed to be true to who they are or be able to express how they are. And if you were, then consider yourself blessed that you had good parents with a good whereabout, or you had the freedom to be able to choose that. But I feel like everybody can have a relatable moment where just like, yeah, I had to suppress something.
Honestly, I think we all have something to work on. I think it would be very silly to think that we are perfect in some capacity. I think really what the difference is that some of us one had the opportunity to deal some of the trauma that we had in the past, whether childhood, teens, or adults, and some of us haven't, for whatever reason there is. We might not have the capacity to deal with it. We might be ready to deal with it. Some of us don't even know how to deal with it. But I think everybody at some point in their life have experienced something negative that weighs us down, pulls us back, holds us back from some of these opportunities that we might have in life. So as you guys are listening to it, I mean, there is something behind this. And Kristina brings up some valid points here. We all got something to work on. You know, Gary could be less cranky. I mean, he could be less cranky. You know,
That's the one thing I don't suppress.
Just rest, like, let it go. Just be Elsa, man. Elsa, just let it go. Let it go.
Oh, yeah.
When with the wind in the sky, let it go. Let it go.
I turn the camera around and point it out the back door. You'll see we're living in Elsa's world right here in Chicago.
Come on, Gary. Don't you have any magical ice powers? You know,
I don't. My magical powers are all very dark. They happen behind closed doors. Yeah, when I'm alone and I can fester.
You know, Kristina, we talked about, between Gary and I, we talked about several times doing like behind the scenes so everybody can see what's going on here. And believe me, when he walked into this room today, he all grumpy, sat down.
I
mopey.
was.
Anyway, something was weighing him down. But anyhow.
No, it wasn't. I got it
Look
out.
at the impact you had on Gary. Look at that. Beautiful. See, I appreciate this because we're going to hang up this call and then he's going to be smiling. I love it.
I won't. No, once we lose you, I'm going to go back.
It's still snowing outside. My dog still ate my couch.
He still ate my couch. Yes.
Still ate my
all those
couch.
things.
There's still snow.
No, I'll be fine. I'll be fine.
Oh.
Don't be in denial. You feel like that meme with the dog sitting in like that bar where everything's on fire.
Yeah, everything's great.
This is fine.
Yeah,
everything's fine. This is fine.
Everything's fine. I feel like that
instead of a
sometimes.
beer, it'll be like a coffee.
Yeah. This is what gets me through. No, everything. I mean, yeah, you know, everything can be fine when it's burning down around you if you know how to deal with it.
You know, that is definitely some people's point of that's their happy place. You know? I'm only happy when things are on.
Yeah, I'm only happy when it rains. What song is that?
But in the real life, I mean, in you know, kind of bringing this back to reality, and you guys tell me what you guys think, but life is short. Life is short, you know, and if we really look at life in this negative spin every single day, I mean, that's a miserable way. It is.
Funny you said that. I don't remember what was on earlier today, but there was somebody on television. I wish I could remember who, but they said life is short or it could be really, really long. And I think, right?
Ooh, yeah.
Never thought about it that way.
And if you don't deal with all these things that we've been talking about, I think that's when things, you know, when things are good and you're working through stuff and you're having good times and good experiences, yeah, life is short. Because you want to do that all again and enjoy it, and it's fleeting. Yeah. But if you're bogged down in all that misery, yeah, I think, man, days and nights can get real, real long. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we could bring this full circle. It's just like we asked, like, oh, if you could answer the why. Why? Yeah. Why? Tell me why. Put your own back to us. Tell me why. Right? If it's learning jiu-jitsu or if it's working on yourself, if it's like why? I feel like why is probably one of the most infuriating and triggering questions a person can get. You know, you think like, you know, you're saying something and then there's like that little kid who's like, but why? But why? But why? Like, you know, and eventually you want to be like, because I said so, right? And they're like, no, but why? You know, why am I doing this? Like, why am I the way that I am? Why do you do the things that you do? And if we could really like honestly answer that question, again, I feel like we're going to find a lot of answers that we didn't think that we were going to find. I dated a guy once and like he was an engineer. And one of the things that he'd say was like I guess the term that they have is like, it's called rubber ducking, where it's like, you don't necessarily have to have an actual rubber duck, but if you have like an object and you talk out loud to it with like whatever problem it is that you're having. So let's just pretend that there's a rubber duck here, you know, and I have this issue and I talk to this rubber duck about this issue and I talk out loud. The fact that I'm bringing that issue out into the actual universe, it's not just living in my brain, and I'm talking. And so I say, rubber duck, why am I like this? Why am I doing this? And more often than not, you get your answers. And you would never found that answer otherwise. You could have asked somebody else, maybe, but like, again, your own problem solving by, instead of asking yourself why here, asking yourself why with, I'm going to pretend this is a rubber duck. Well, tell me why. And then now you're giving your source of your own answers.
Yeah. I've never heard of that.
I like it. Because I think when you get the answers from other people, you have to deal with yourself again that we were talking about. And when somebody else is giving you the answer, it's very easy to deny. It's very easy to say, no, that's not the reason, because you're not admitting the real issue. But I think that, if you spend time with yourself a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, I don't get those answers. It'd be so weird, people walking around with a rubber duck, talking to it.
I'm going to hang out with that guy. Everybody I see.
I have an idea. I have an idea. Instead of rubber duck, use my bubble head.
Oh, geez, I'm going to. All this, Kristina, all this work and breakthrough we just had, right back in the toilet because of his bobblehead.
Okay, we'll use it. You should make a Funko Pop. Like those little Funko Pop figurines. That will be the next evolution. That looks a little too tall to talk to. I want a little something short, little stout style I can put in my hand.
I'm gonna get one made of myself. A gap in the teeth and everything. Everything.
I would love for it to be able to float that way if I want to take a bath and sit there and bath.
You guys are taking this to the next level. You guys are taking this to the next level.
Kristina, have a rubber duck with your bobblehead on it in the bath.
Look at that. Look at that. There is an opportunity. Listen, before we wrap this up, end of each episode, what we do is somebody who is sitting in your seat in a previous episode asked a question not knowing that you are going to be here, and Gary's going to take a lead on this. We have a question from you from a previous
Thomas Leboa asked, how much has your no-gi game helped your gi game and vice versa?
Ooh, okay. Definitely gi game helped the no-gi game more than anything. Like I said, the first time I showed any jiu-jitsu, it was no-gi. Did not make a lick of sense at all. It was just, it didn't really get to the point where it could even really be sweaty, but it was just like, this just feels like flopping around. I'm just like, there's a mat, and I'm just like, this just feels like flailing, right? Like I'm drowning, and I'm looking for a buoy, I'm looking for a life jacket. Didn't make a lick of sense. Then the gi came in, and I'm like, oh my God, this makes total sense, right? Like, because I could slow it down. So once I got the idea of like, okay, I know what to do now because I was able to slow down the game in the gi, no-gi made so much more sense. So even though I didn't have my grips, I could still apply the technique with the same concepts. Like, okay, I need to get my hip out a certain way because if I don't, I'm not going to be able to use my arms or my legs as a frame. I need to get my hand over here. Oh, I can't grab anything, but it still needs to be over here to attach to something. I need to attach to something. So it made it so I went from drowning, right, to learning how to, first tread water and then like actually swim, right? And then no-gi over is like, I felt like my game got even faster too. I want to say that my gi game and my no-gi game are very similar, but they're also completely opposite, right? There are a lot of things that I do that are like specific just for my no-gi game. And I'm not a mean person, but if enough people say like, hey, when you train no-gi, you're kind of mean, I'm thinking that they're probably saying something. They're probably just talking from hurt feelings. So yeah, they don't know what they're talking. I'm not mean. No, I'm guessing like, I'm not a mean person. And my game isn't mean in general, but I am very like I like attacking. I am very attack based, and I like I won't say forcing positions, but I like giving you options that aren't really options for you. I mean, they are, but it's options for you so that I get what I want, right? Like
it's all about choices, right?
Yeah, you're not gonna like these options. It's like the illusion of choice of like the cows going into the slaughterhouse. It's like, here, pick door A or pick door B, but it all ends up in the same place. Yep. It's like, so, and then no-gi has just been like the meaner version of that. So I'd say like the gi one gave me the confidence to do what I want to do in no-gi. And then with no-gi, I get like that speed. I also get quite a bit of creativity there too, because since I don't have the gi to work with, I have to find ways of like, how can I recreate these same positions for no-gi that I like doing in the gi. And then, so now there's like this nice, like, again, evolution of what I can do. So they both they go hand in hand with each other. But at the end of the day, I am very much a gi pajama lover. I like my pajamas. I like my grips. But I feel like I have a very underrated nogi game just because I don't compete in it as much. And as much as I say like, oh, I hate nogi, which I don't hate it. I just definitely have my favorite. I just have my favorite child, you know, or I have my favorite pet, right? Like, nogi is like that friend that like you have your best friend and then you have your friend who's like you're cool with, you know, but like you always want to hang out with your best friend. But if your best friend has like to cancel, and then like this other friend hits up like, hey, like hang out, and you're like,
I got nothing else to do.
Yeah, I got nothing else to do. My best friend canceled on me. And then you go and you hang out with them and you're like chopping it up. You're like, oh man, why don't we hang out more? And then they do that thing that makes you really annoyed. You're like, oh, that's why we don't hang out more often. That's why. Oh, heel hooks. That's why. Oh, you're, you know, super sweaty and like no grips. And then the mat is like a slip and slide and we're just rolling around in each other's sweat and body hairs and right. That is why we don't hang out as often, but we're cool. There's nothing wrong with you. We're cool, but portion it out. We're gonna be wild the next time we hang out, you know?
I love it. I love it. Hey, listen, before we wrap this up, does your mom watch any of your competition?
Yes and no.
Some things just don't change. That's okay.
Yeah. You know, she all she knows is I'm not getting punched or kicked. And so she's kind of happy with that. She knows like, but she does get worried. Like, I mean, like, I think, like she came to 2 of my fight to wins. One of the fight to wins, like I blew out my knee. My knee tore and I had to get surgery. And like same thing. Like there's a photo of me smiling. I'm like, this is fine. Like the person saying, I'm so sorry. You know, one of my best friends is there. Like he was there coaching me, and he's like giving her the death stare. And I'm like, oh, it's fine. There's literal photo. It's fine. And then they carry me off. They take me to the back. My mom comes in, and then my mom's, dang, I'm not gonna, like, Mom, tears, Mom, like, you know, I was completely stone cold faced, like, I'm fine, this is fine, yeah. I'm like, oh man, that recovery time is gonna be something. And then my mom came in and I'm crying, and she's like, why are you doing this? Crying, why, you know? But she's also trying to smile, like she's crying, and she's like, I know, my baby, you're so sad, but she's also like, it's okay, and she's like secretly, hopefully this is the reason why she stopped doing jiu-jitsu. You know, but then she came into another fight to win and I won, and she's like, I'm so proud of you. Oh yeah, but you know, she's like, oh, that's so exciting. But when she says that's so exciting, she means like I almost got a heart attack. You know, she came to one Muay Thai fight, the first Muay Thai fight ever, and that was it. She was like, no, never again. Like I had to go to the doctor. I had heart palpitations. I need medication now because I almost had a heart attack. No more, and don't make me do this anymore. I'm like, I won't. But the jiu-jitsu, it's a little better. So I'll show them my videos in post after, but otherwise it's kind of hard because I'm always traveling anyways, and they're not going to travel to watch me compete.
Yeah.
But,
well, good for you. It sounds like that's working out slowly, progressively. She's adapting to the situation.
Water on rocks.
Exactly.
Water over a rock.
Listen, it took my dad 10 years to come into the academy to see a class. When I got my black belt, that was the first time when my dad saw me in a gi. Oh. He did not want to have anything to do with it. Nothing. Oh. And now he's like the biggest fan. He's like, yeah.
Oh, my dad's a fan. My dad's a fan. My mom's like, you know, anxious and like always worried, but my dad's like, yeah,
that's my girl.
Like, yeah, that's my girl, right? Like sometimes he'll be talking like my parents are really big in their church and they have like choir practice, and sometimes like they'll have like some younger guys come in and, you know, they're talking and like, and, you know, just kind of notice like somehow jiu-jitsu got into the conversation, and then they're like, oh, so you do jiu-jitsu, huh? And you're like, yeah, I've been trying out this new sport. Like, my daughter does jiu-jitsu. Like, really? Like, she's a black belt. Really? Like, she's a 3-time Masters world champion. What? He's been in magazines. And he like says that, I'm like, yeah, look. And like, he'll like start bringing out like the clippings.
Does he
like,
have it? Yeah, he's got it tucked in his jacket pocket.
Right? Yeah, he's ready. He's on the ready. Which is, it's so funny because it's like, it's just me and my brother, you know, and my brother's older than me by 3 years, but we're the complete opposite. So like, and both of us same thing. We never played sports. My brother is like very more to like his books, very, very intelligent, super analytical, like concert pianist, right? Very not physical at all. And then there's me, who's just like, ragtag, and, you know, and so he like, I was definitely a daddy's girl. And so it's just kind of like, you know, sometimes you feel like, you know, a lot of dads, like stereotypically dads, like, yeah, that's my son, right? That's my boy. And it's like, my daughter, that's my girl. I'm like, yeah.
We should get him on this show so he can tell us some good stories about you. I'm just saying.
My God. He's like the one who he always has like the big fancy camera, and he always have two. But he's also like the quiet observer. Like he won't be like, yeah, ding. He'll be like somewhere in the background. How to capture this, and then he'll show
until
me
you
the
flip
photos.
the switch, though, right? Until you get him started, you pull the string, and then he's not going to stop.
No, yeah, he'll put up the photos, like, look, here you're focused, and here, this looks like a really good story. You're like walking out there, it's very good capture there, and then he's like, wow, that was something. You just grabbed them and like, wow. And wow, you know, they're very animated. I love my parents. That's wonderful. Like they have a hard time understanding why I chose what I chose, but they love me regardless. But they again, water over rock. So I got them to try Jiu Jitsu one time when I was living in Arizona. Actually, I did. Yeah, they visited me for Thanksgiving, and I don't know how I convinced them. I have a picture of it. Like my mom's wearing one of my old gis, and then my dad's wearing like a loaner gi from the gym. You know, then like no Hanyeo sign in the background. And then I have a really, really nice picture of my mom choking my dad out. And my dad was like, was laughing at her. My dad's like, haha, you're not going to choke me. You're not going to choke me. And my mom's like, I'm sorry, daddy. I'm sorry. And then like right when I took the picture is right when she squeezed. So he's like, and that's right when I took the photo. So my mom looks like she's about to cry, and my dad is like halfway between laughing and like in agony. He's like, you know, it's great. That was core memory. I got them to do a trial class. They didn't spar. I just had them, do the warm-ups and then try the techniques. But I got them on the mat. They did it.
That's
It's awesome memories. I mean, it's so phenomenal. I wish my dad tried Jiu Jitsu. Maybe one day. Who knows?
When I was, my mom was always like, and you pay for that?
Yeah. I heard that one before.
Oh, yeah. No, my mom is the biggest when I would diet down for tournaments. I have to make weight for like light feather. Like, I don't understand. I'm not, why do you have to do this? Why? Oh, and then it's like the yo-yo where like I'm dieting, and then after the tournament I'm like eating ice cream. Like, you're going to get fat. I'm like, just last week you were saying I'm too skinny. Now I'm eating ice cream to like regain, and you're like, no, I'm gonna get fat. Like, I can't win.
Listen, that's their job. Yeah. That's their job. Yeah. That's their job. Kristina, listen, the worst part about this show that it has to come to the end at some point. We gotta wrap this up. But before we do so, where can listeners find you? Where can people find you? If anybody wants to connect with you, talk to you more about this episode, everything that you shared with us.
Yeah, best way always is going to be Instagram. I'm super active on there. Slide in the old DMs. Don't do that. Don't slide in my DMs. But you can send me a message. Yeah, my boyfriend would protest to that. Like, I did not slide in the DMs. I was just asking a question. But yeah, I'm completely reachable there for the most part. Like, for as long as the question is obviously respectful and along the lines of like you want an actual answer, like not like trolling me. I'm answering to everybody for the most part. Like, so accessible through there. You can follow me on Facebook. You can shoot me an email if you want, but Instagram is the most, I guess it's like the less awkward way. I'm an introvert. I get it. It's not very easy saying hi to somebody. So yeah, the old Instagram makes it a little bit easier, right. So at KB Jiu Jitsu.
Well, thanks for being here. Almost hour and a half.
Yeah.
Thanks for being here. What a phenomenal conversation. What a phenomenal story. And thank you for sharing all the wisdom. Gary?
Yeah, I can't say enough for what you shared with everybody today. So thank you. I love it when you never know where these are going to go. We even said that before we started recording. And I love when they head into a meaningful direction. So thank you so much.
And it was fun.
Yeah, and it was fun too. Absolutely.
Talked about dogs traumatizing us. About ice powers and grumpy.
We took
and there's
this
some
and then-
jiu-jitsu in there.
Yeah, there's a little bit of jiu-jitsu.
There's a little bit of jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, it all relates.
It's a balance, all well-rounded.
All right, Kristina. We'll see you around. Thanks for being here, and take care.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for
Peace.
having me.
Thank you for listening to RŌL Radio. If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to leave us a review and help us make the show even more amazing. For future episodes, check out our website and follow us on all major podcast platforms. Take care.